Good Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast with Jesse Simonton, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price. Brent Hubbs, glad to have you along with us. We got a lot to get to. Pretty newsy middle of the week for Tennessee. Let's start first with, the Aubrey Solomon news. Knew it was coming. No, we didn't. We thought it was coming. Tennessee hoped that it was coming. Austin, you get the word earlier in the week and pop that story. For Tennessee, for Tracy Rocker, for the defense, how big is this one compared to even Trey Smith or things? I mean, where do you put this in perspective for this defensive line?
I think it's huge for the defensive line, but, he's still got to be able to show that he can stay healthy. I don't think it's as big as getting Trey Smith back because you know what Trey has been. Will Trey be the same as he was? If he was at tackle, I would for sure say probably not. But, with him at guard, I do think that there's a better chance that Trey can have a bigger impact than he would have if they were still having him at tackle. So for Aubrey, I think it's big because it is a guy that does have talent, is very much a specimen that Tennessee was kind of covets along that defensive line, and just a guy that's at least played meaningful snaps at the Power 5 level at Michigan.
I mean, Tennessee's best defensive lineman out of the gate.
From what we've been the buzz we've been hearing. I know I've heard that. I would guess all you guys have too. For a group that's pretty much got nobody that's done anything in the SEC, he's viewed as their best lineman.
I'll take the more tepid approach. I think he has the highest upside of all their linemen. I think it's notable that even as effusive as Jeremy's been about a Henry, about some of the other, even Jarrett Garantano, some of the other guys, he has continuously lumped in every single player on the defensive line with this, saying they pretty much are all the same. They pretty much do all the same stuff. Last year, Solomon at Michigan did not perform particularly well, was much better as a freshman. I am with Austin. I do think if we're comparing impact, Solomon versus Trey Smith, there's a chance Trey Smith is the best football player on this team. So to have him back, I think, is immense. I mean, he if he finds himself playing left guard the way he did as a freshman, could take an offensive line that graded out, it was a D a year ago, to potentially a C+ on his own. And then it's kind of how does it go around?
How does everybody else grow around?
Yeah, how does everybody else go around?
Yeah, but here's my thing. I agree from a talent standpoint, it's not close. They do have some more competition on the offensive line. Defensively, you're putting a guy in who's played in the Power 5 ranks for 2 seasons. Granted, he's not dominated, but he's played. I look around and Darrell Middleton has not played. Savion Williams has not played. John Mincy's played 3 games.
But Matthew Butler has been as productive as Aubrey Solomon. Aubrey Solomon has not been. He is a 5-star that I think has much more physical upside and gifts than a Matthew Butler. But production-wise, he hasn't been that different than a guy that.
And who knows? Some people just need a change of scenery and they flourish. I mean, how many times have you seen that? A kid gets to a different school.
So he's healthy now too. He's healthy, which he wasn't a year ago.
So that's kind of I'm taking what Jesse's saying and saying, okay, if you're going to look at it from the positive side of that, he's right, apples to apples, stats wise, but maybe there was something amiss at Michigan. Maybe that he didn't like the position coach he played for, or something that was going on behind the scenes. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying potentially that could be the case.
I mean, but clearly, I think we all believe that Solomon's upside is higher than Butler's upside.
Well, I said
which
that.
Is what you're saying, right?
Absolutely,
100%.
absolutely. And I think, no doubt, Solomon changes the ceiling on this defensive line now. If you put him next to Middleton and Emerson, you're at least like, all right, those are 3 guys that look like other teams' SEC defensive linemen. How do they perform? We'll see. But you're like, man, those guys are all 325, 315. They look like they can play.
And here's the one thing you got to remember about all those guys. And not to say, Tennessee's not even kicked off the first game of 2019, but every one of those dudes is back in 2020. So I mean, you have, if Emerson continues to grow, you get Emmett Gooden back, Solomon, and then you go out and you sign some of these defensive linemen Tennessee's recruiting, the Jay Hardys, Tyler Barron, so on and so forth. I mean, potentially it goes from a position of real weakness to a position of strength as far as depth going forward.
I think that's certainly a
Again,
fair
I know
point.
we've not kicked off 2019,
Right.
and I'm already projecting to 2020.
But certainly you're looking at it that way. Could Trey Smith be worth a win? Is his return worth a win?
I mean,
I know it's hard to say.
it's
that,
hard
but
to quantify, but I mean, I can see them. He could be worth a first down or two a game for a team that couldn't pick up 3rd and 2 against a good SEC defense last year. And could that translate into a win or
makes the difference
six
between
more
finishing
points?
off one drive or
Yeah.
finishing out a game.
I mean,
So yeah, in theory,
for an offensive line that averaged less than 4 yards a carry last year, I mean, I think getting him back is immense.
how much does his leadership help the development of this offensive line too? Because he's fought really hard and he understands he's taking some risk here. I mean, they're going through an unusual plan, and we're going to assume that it works all season long. But how much does everybody turn to him and follow him because A, he's the best player, Jesse. B, he's doing everything he can to play for this team.
Oh, I think that speaks volumes. I mean, we mentioned it in the Rocky Top Roundtable, and then again in kind of the impact of what Trey Smith brings to Tennessee. The fact that some of these other guys I think have struggled a little bit with conditioning, consistency, what have you. But Trey's a guy that both the coaches can point to, and Trey can then point back at the players and say, hey, this is what this means to me. It needs to mean the same for you. We got to be all in this together. We got to be all stepping, forward together. In terms of we're talking about whether it's worth a win or on-field impact, I do think Rob has talked a lot about it this offseason. We've all written about it. Tennessee was so anemic in the run game a year ago. Last in the SEC in yards per carries, one of the worst. Also last in the SEC in tackles for loss allowed. Trey Smith did not have a particularly strong 7 games a year ago. He was really up and down. He lacked that consistency. But he routinely graded out, both according to Pro Football Focus and even on some of the ESPN stuff, as Tennessee's best run blocker. The fact they're moving him inside back to his natural position, I believe, and you got Jim Chaney's going to be running all this split zone it is tailor-made for your guards and centers to just be knocking the hats off somebody. Should truly help Tennessee's run game this fall.
And we talked about this a little bit in the impact. You mentioned it too a little bit. There's the one question you have about Trey is, can he be at his best when he's not taking contact through the week and basically only hitting people on Saturdays? That's the one concern negative. But the fact, Rob, that he's playing a position that he's clearly more comfortable at, how much does that negate the quote rust or the lack of preparation during the week physically?
Oh, I think it's a huge benefit, but the contact stuff. I mean, how much do
you actually do once the season
or
starts?
NFL teams for that matter? I mean, once the season starts, I mean, you're virtually none. So I think the fact that he's not played real football other than Jeremy let us in that he apparently had a couple of contact practices in August as kind of test runs. I think that there's going to be some rust there, but I don't put a lot of stock in him, not doing contact during the season. I don't think that's a huge deal.
I'm in agreement. I think that issue will subside by
Quickly.
Chattanooga. I think we may see that rust these first 3 weeks. So I guess it's not going to be an issue against Georgia State. Not going to be an issue against Chattanooga in terms of win-loss. If Trey plays badly against BYU, does that become an issue? Because he's not used to going up against some 330s and actually hitting them back.
All right, let's look at the rest of this offensive line. Now that Trey's there, going to be the starter at left guard. What do you do the rest of what do you do the rest of the positions? Are you going Tatum right tackle or left tackle?
I think they'll go Tatum at right tackle and they'll start Wanye at left tackle.
I agree with that, and I had I'm going to have teaser for the 10 things, but I think that there's several, with all the talk about newcomers, I think there's a couple veterans on this team that the first couple weeks of the season are going to be extremely important for. One of those guys to me is Riley Locklear. I think he has a chance to kind of earn that right guard spot. I don't know if he'll absolutely get the first crack at it. I think Austin and I are in agreement that he's likely to, because he's a guy that has played a little bit. Does kind of bring some both physicality and a bit more consistency than a guy like K'Ron or even Jerome. And they're working Jerome a lot at center too. I mean, I think the first hiccup that Brandon Kennedy shows, Kennedy has not played a lot of football. I think Jerome may get a look at center. So again, I mean, I wrote it a week ago. I think this is going to be more about who is not in the rotation the first couple weeks, and then they'll kind of figure out, all right, how do we find a five that gel?
All right, let's stay on the offensive side. Well, let's hop over real quick to the defensive deal. Obviously, there was more news about Bryce Thompson this week as the week has progressed. Remains suspended from the team. I think what we know is that we don't know everything. You don't know all sides to everything, but this one's got some deeper teeth to it in terms of the entire story, which means you're probably not going to get a quick resolution. Anybody disagree with that?
I agree with that. I mean, I think it does lend itself to think that, it's going to take some time to kind of, go through everything. But, I mean, you're right. I think the best way to look at it is obviously Bryce, doesn't come off in a good light, and I'm sure there's some things that he's done he's not proud of. I wouldn't, think that he's 100% guilty of everything been charged as well. So, I mean, like, it's one of those things where I think, it's kind of always in the middle. Got his story, her story. Likely it's somewhere in the middle in the gray.
But if you're Tennessee, Rob, you better make sure you don't. There's no other surprises hidden back
with
around the way.
I mean, it's just such a hot button issue. I mean, the NFL is cracked down hugely. I mean, you see it in sports everywhere, and it's with good reason it's a hot button issue. But I mean, I think the current climate that we're in, from a media perception standpoint, just the restraining order thing, just put a whole different. Added another layer to it. I think where public relations. I mean, you're getting into something that could be ugly.
And there's no reason for Jeremy to rush into saying anything.
Right.
I mean, he's kind of been the status quo on that, and
which is
Bryce,
a smart move.
But yeah, Bryce will have his court date on Tuesday, and we'll figure out what that is for the charge that happened on campus a week ago, and then at some point we're guessing the university is going to get involved with the code student conduct because of the comments that have nothing to do with the charges, and then now there's this added layer of the prior restraining order. So I think it's all going to play itself out, and then once the full story is out there or all the details are out there, Tennessee will make a decision, on Bryce's future.
I'll say this, in talking to enough people on campus this week, the new chancellor has been very hands-on, very much. She's not, hey, telling her people, let me know when you know something. She's been in meetings, had direct conversations with Philip Fulmer, with Jeremy Pruitt. There's some people that on campus that have had conversations with Bryce Thompson as well. Even some early preliminary, just almost psychological type reviews with him. They've been very proactive this week. It's not, while Pruitt can't say anything, it's not like they've just sat back and said, hey, we'll wait and see what happens with the charges next week and go from there. There's been a whole lot of conversations going on, so we'll see how that one plays out over the course of time. It's not going to play out quickly, I don't believe. And again, if you're Jeremy Pruitt and you're the football program who signed this young man, before you get out there stumping for anything, you better make sure there's nothing else in the closet anywhere, because you don't want to go stumping hard for him and then something else get dropped about something in the past. That would not be good for them and from a PR standpoint at all. It's bad enough as it is now. You certainly don't want that to be the case out there either. So we'll wait and see how that one takes place. Let's get to football. Let's get to the game. I think we all agree, and we'll have the predictions a little bit later this afternoon, season predictions and game predictions. Tennessee should win this game handily. Let's go back to the offensive side of the ball. Jim Chaney's three priorities for tomorrow are three things to accomplish tomorrow are.
He's going to say it's make the fewest mistakes, but it's physicality. 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think physicality's at the top. I would agree with you. I mean, play a clean game, as Cheney likes to say. I think that will be of interest to him, but not as much as knocking people off the football.
This is a Georgia State team that gave up 1,000,000 yards on the ground a year ago. They also, I do think Tennessee's going to generate plenty of explosive play. I think they're going to be run heavy because they want to establish this identity of put your face mask in somebody and be able to fall forward and let's improve on that 3.3 yards per carry we had a year ago. But this was the worst pass defense in college football a year ago. They ranked 130th. They had the worst completion percentage a year ago, ranking 129, tied for 129, 130. So, I mean, this is a bad Georgia State defense. They did play a lot of freshmen, so perhaps some of those guys as sophomores will be better. But Cheney has also said that Garantano, and And, the veteran receivers on this team are going to kind of carry the offense. So I would not be surprised if you see run, play action shot.
What about for you? Physicality?
Well, I think it's physicality, but I think it's just, to me, it's all encompassing of, you want to establish just dominance, whether that's just punching you right in the mouth or finding ways to get past you with the deep ball. I think he wants to see, biggest thing I think Jim Chaney wants to see, besides that physicality, which is evident, but is clean and quick. Clean game and get your starters out quick. Let those guys get their points and get off the field and get out of the game. And get time, quality time for 12, 18.
Which is the backup quarterback.
Yeah, that's the backup quarterback.
The roster in front of them.
Yeah, Stroud and Maurer. And really just, because ultimately, those guys don't need to come in and just go, here, hand off. You need to let them kind of run with the framework of the offense. You can play conservative, try to not run up the score with your backups, but yet still run the framework of the offense to allow them to, throw the football and make some plays.
I was just saying, I think figuring out who your backup quarterback is a pretty big deal right now when you got two guys who've never taken a college snap and a starter who got knocked out in 3 or 4 games last year.
But it's going to be incumbent on a lot of the guys that Tennessee's going to be counting on the rest of the season to play some real snaps on Saturday, because there are so many unknowns in the line, in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And while I think that the point spread of this is like 26 or something, Georgia State is a really bad football team. They won 2 games a year ago. I think they are worse than UNLV, worse than Charlotte a year ago. But it is a reminder that Tennessee did not beat the doors off of either one of those teams. One was 24-0. The other was about the ugliest game ever seen in Neyland Stadium, 14-3. So, the physicality, but they're going to need to, if they want to get Shrout and Maurer and some of these, other newcomers real looks, how much can, Kavaris Crouch play, Roman Harrison, they're going to have to jump out to a real lead to actually take, the guys that you're also wanting to get some, real burn on Saturday.
I may be proven wrong. Vols may win 14-3 again Saturday. I think a lot of this is going to look, you're going to look back and go, a year ago was a lot of just indecision on the offensive side, not having Tyson Helton kind of being in over his head, Jeremy Pruitt not having full trust in Tyson Helton, those type of things. That's
lack of
and a lack of experience at certain positions.
Well, and a lack of identity. For me, for Jim Chaney, I think it's 2 things. One, it's the physicality part. 2, it's JG managing a football game, because there's been all this talk about he's got full control. How does he manage the game? Does he get in the right checks? Does he make the right adjustments that they need to make? All right, they may not formation everybody to death on Saturday. He's still got to manage the game. And for the growth of this offense, where is his jumping off point in game management with Jim Chaney's offense versus what it can become, and what's the ceiling there? And I go back to Tennessee's opener when Lane Kiffin was here with Jonathan Crompton. They handled, I think, Western Kentucky in the opener, in a big way. They ran all over them. Then they got into that next game against UCLA, which was a good defense, and they couldn't move the football because they couldn't manage. Jonathan Crompton wasn't ready really to manage and run the game. So I think there's a lot from an evaluation standpoint on Jim Chaney of, hey, what exactly in a 60-minute game against an opponent that's doing some unusual or maybe some stuff we didn't see, and they've got some wrinkles here and there, how does the quarterback handle that? So I would put the quarterback's play in one of the priorities for Jim Chaney when you talk about those 3 things.
Yeah, and coming out of Saturday, I mean, mentioning UNLV and Charlotte from a year ago, I do think if Tennessee blows out Georgia State, it does show at least, a step in the right direction in terms of beating up a patsy. But in all likelihood, when the 4 of us are talking about this game on Saturday night, breaking it down, whatever, the result is going to be far less important than individual evaluations from, Henry To'oTo'o or from Eric Gray or Darrell Middleton and Savion Williams. It's going to be very, I think, individual based because Georgia State is going to be so overmatched.
All right, with that being in mind, we talked about this a little bit in the Rocky Top Roundtable about kind of who you're wanting to see, what guy you're most intrigued. I think the question you asked Austin was who has the buzz on Sunday. Who are you most interested to see on both sides of the ball?
To see is Eric Gray. I'm really interested to see him. I just, does he live up to the expectations? I mean, I know there's been the comparisons and all that, but I mean, just what can he bring to the offense? Do you think he gets in the end zone Saturday? I personally do.
Yeah, I think he'll probably score on Saturday. I would see that. I think, but the question, I'm with you on that one because you've heard all the buzz. I mean, 2.5 weeks ago, he was the guy everybody was talking about. Vision like you haven't seen, and, I'm saying all this kind of crazy
Superman.
stuff.
Heisman, no running back's going to ever win the Heisman again, and they're already playing a kid that hadn't played a college game. Heisman.
So the question
There's your
is,
shock jock. When can I start?
The question is, when does, what does he do on a game, in a game with all the buzz that's been around there? Because look, the Henry T stuff has been from day one, and we know he's going to start. We know how much Jeremy Pruitt believes in him. Jeremy Pruitt has said some good things about Eric Gray, and then he's thrown a little cold water on Eric Gray as well.
Well, we know he's fumbled at least 3 or 4 times in the scrimmages.
So what does that look like? I'm with you. I'm very interested in seeing what he looks like. I'm not qualified enough to grade out how Wanye Morris is going to play against this defense or Darnell Wright, but I can tell you if Eric Gray can play, in the open field. And then I think Warren Burrell, because of the uncertainty with Bryce Thompson and the link there, I think Warren Burrell's a guy I'm really curious to see how he performs on Saturday. Even though this is not a great Georgia State offense, they'll test him. They'll try to throw it over his head. How does he play in coverage? I think it's going to be really intriguing because Tennessee's going to have him.
Yep.
He's going to be counted upon heavily. So that's my defensive guy.
I would go 1A and 1B. Henry T. I mean, I just want to see if he lives up to the hype. And Darrell Middleton. I mean, I've just been kind of fascinated by him since the first day of fall camp. Tennessee's not had a guy that looks like that in a long time. Now, can he play? Is the question.
I'm going to go off the board a little bit and not take a newcomer. I'm going to take
DeAndre Johnson.
He's on that list. I have a kind of little thing for my 10 things, but I got
Trayvon Flowers.
No, it's veterans like DeAndre Johnson, Sean Schamberger, Brandon Johnson, Riley Locklear. These are guys that I think are going to be in positions to see some real snaps on Saturday, but they got some guys breathing down their neck, younger guys with maybe more upside but aren't showcasing the consistency. But a guy like Brandon Johnson, who was buried a year ago on the wide receiver depth chart, is suddenly now running behind Juwan at slot. Have we heard Murphy's name at all in his camp?
No.
I mean, he wasn't even listed on the 2 deep because Brandon Johnson has just completely lapped him. Even a guy like Jacquez Jones has lapped him there. So I'm going to be curious just about some of these veterans. Pruitt had his comments 10 days or so ago.
Can we call them Butch's orphans?
Yeah, you can. That's it.
That's what we should term.
I mean it's whatever you want to call them. I mean they're guys though that Pruitt kind of intimated that there's some guys that we got some new guys that may not be ready to start now.
But in
4 games they might. Well, you know what? I think Tennessee's going to need Sean Schamberger. I think Tennessee's going to need DeAndre Johnson to give him some snaps this fall. We'll see. Brandon Johnson, I mean, the wide receiver course deep, but it seems noteworthy that he, again, was way down the depth chart a year ago, led the team in receiving 2 or 3 years ago, and now he's suddenly a factor
from 38
again.
receptions to 12 receptions.
Yeah, and now they're suddenly bringing him out for interviews again. And that's not the end-all, be-all, but it does at least show that there's some sort of, faith in a guy like him.
Be interesting to see. It's a football game that has more intrigue about the individuals than it does about the 11 guys or the 22 guys or even the scoreboard there. But
just give me the next week.
I
hate games like this.
There's
The
a lot to
only
learn.
saving grace is the first game of the year.
There's a lot to learn about this in terms of individuals. It will be interesting to see how some guys react. And
AP's already talking 2020, week 2. We ain't even played a damn game yet.
I just hate these type of games.
Moving on, right? All right, let's talk recruiting right quick. We talked about Whitehead's going to be in for an official visit, and then some commits for unofficial visits this weekend.
Yeah,
that looks like the
Keyshawn
bulk
Hyatt,
of that, right?
Jalen
Ojulari.
Hyatt, yeah, BJ,
Harrison.
Jay Hardy, who's not a commitment, but will be up here.
That's big.
I had to make sure note that he was not a commitment because we were talking commitments. Otherwise, people will start reading into things. And then guys like Cooper, Tyler, another guy that's not committed to Tennessee. would not be surprised if they're here as well.
Yeah, so be a lot of in-state guys, and then Whitehead is obviously.
And that's honestly good. If you're trying to land Lenneth Whitehead, getting him around these other guys that would potentially be in your class, I think it's huge if you're, trying to help build the bond between him, who, he kind of is out there on an island over there in Athens.
And he's going to take some more visits, though. And
Yeah.
so we'll wait and see what happens with that. Lastly, as we wrap it up, I think we talked about this a little bit Monday. Tennessee's going to get the last visit for Jaden Springer. It's got to set up well.
Yeah.
Looks like it sets up very well for Tennessee.
I think Tennessee, more importantly, got what they wanted. I think they wanted the last visit. They're getting the last visit. It tells me that Springer and his family worked with Tennessee, which I think is pretty ideal. And again, I keep saying when you're talking about the number 12 player in the country, things can get crazy down towards the end. But I think Tennessee is in great shape here as they get ready to head into September.
If they can land that one, it'd be one hell of a haul.
It would be incredible. 3 5-stars,
Best we've ever seen.
3 of the top 24 players in the current Rivals rankings. It would be remarkable.
Yeah.
There's no way. It may not be a top class if Duke or Kentucky signs 2 or 3 guys in the top 10, but it will be a top 3. Definitely top 5 class.
Yeah, swimming in waters Tennessee hasn't been in maybe ever on the basketball recruiting front. We'll keep close tabs on that. Have more on hoops coming up as we progress through the fall, but obviously lots of football. Congratulations, you've made it to the first official game week, and it's Tennessee, Georgia State tomorrow afternoon. You got Auburn, Oregon tomorrow night. Anybody jumping on that one? Auburn, Oregon. You taking Oregon? Everybody taking Oregon on that one? Is Nick's going to win that as a freshman quarterback?
I think. That's going to be a fascinating game to watch because it's one of the best offensive lines in the country. Oregon, I think, returns 4 starters, including Noah Sewell's brother, who was a freshman All-American, and Auburn may have the best defensive line in the SEC. It's going to be a fun one to watch. Rob and I were talking about that. We want to get home after the Georgia State game to watch that game.
And then a freshman 5-star quarterback against a guy who. A quarterback that could have maybe been the number 1 pick in the draft and he came out last year. The future of the position maybe in college football and one of the established stars.
A lot of intrigue there. Then you got Vanderbilt and Georgia.
Give me Georgia.
Hide the women and children.
Taking Georgia early and often on that one?
Yes.
So we'll see what the
There's some other fun games on Saturday.
What else you got for me?
Too.
All right. What else you got? Parlay boy.
Well,
What's on your parlay?
Nah.
You got Louisville hanging with Notre Dame Monday night?
No, I don't. I'm not. I do think Louisville's going to be better on Saturday.
Notre Dame.
I told Rob I would look at Louisville's over at their over under for wins is like 3.
Notre
I'd
Dame's
take
got
the
no
over.
chance.
That team quit on Petrino.
Brian Kelly opened up practices to the media this fall. There's no way they won't be able to win a game.
Everybody's going to know what they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Come out and guess their first 12.
We joked about this last week. Who's a team that's not in the top 25 that could.
That was asked in the mailbag. Who's going to jump in there?
Yeah, and I said, jokingly said, but in all seriousness, I think they're a real team that could do that because they won 10 plus games a year ago. But Boise State plays Florida State neutral site. That's a huge one for Willie Taggart.
That's a huge game for Willie Taggart.
They might be ready to write that buyout check.
Boise State's losing their. That's one that you better win.
Yeah, that's a big early game for Willie Taggart and Florida State for sure. So a couple games to check out in addition to obviously Tennessee. We'll have full coverage of Tennessee pregame, Tennessee post-game coverage from the Georgia State game, and then we'll talk about it all on Sunday, and then we'll be back with you on Monday. Or Tuesday, with our Tuesday edition of the Volquest.com podcast. For Austin Price, Rob Lewis, and Jesse Simonton, I'm Brent Hubbs. Have a great game day weekend, everybody.